Good afternoon, everyone. Glad you're able to join me today. Another always sunny blue sky day here in Rochester, New York. A little different weather pattern for Aaron in the background. Um, Thank you for joining me today and joining us today. We're talking about the very exciting world of Social Security. I'm super excited to have on Aaron Young. He's one of our experts in our planning department. If you ever Google him, you'll see the whole list of alphabet soup after his name. Just an absolute financial planning nerd at heart, and I think he might disagree, but what I find most impressive is his master's in personal financial planning. If any of you have reached out to me on questions and I've said, let me check with our planning department first, Aaron is absolutely the guy that I'm running back to and saying, here's this crazy situation. How the heck does it work? How can we help these people? So super excited to have Aaron on. Before I let him dive into things, I do want to mention this is a re-recording, so I may have forgotten to press record on the first one. What we found in the live session is it ended up lasting an extra 15 minutes from some of the great questions that we had and just kind of carrying on in such a deep, complex topic. So I'll give a mark around 15 minutes, but then we'll probably carry on after that with some more in-depth questions. So Aaron, thanks for being on the Tele today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a great topic, and I think that we are, some of the few people who really enjoy talking about Social Security, and that is because it's such an important part of a retirement income strategy. So happy to be here, and just want to point out this is a very generalized discussion today. Social Security is a very personalized and individualized retirement income stream, and we want to make sure that you take a look at it on an individualized basis as part of your full comprehensive plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good point. Maybe we can start out with just kind of the basics, or maybe the most common thing that I hear people talking about is what age should I be filing at, right? Or how early or late, or what's the trade-offs, and how does that work? Could you give us a little kind of the starters on things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great place to start here. So I shared my handy little PowerPoint here. So when we look at Social Security, there's really a starting point that we want to talk about in terms of benefits, and that's full retirement age. And this varies from person to person, but we'll use 67 in this example. People who take Social Security can claim it as early as 62 or as late as 70 for their general retirement benefits. And at age 67, you have your full retirement age and also your base benefit amount. So anytime you take Social Security before 67, whether that's 66, 65, 62, or you can even take Social Security at various months, it's not based on a certain year, your retirement benefit decreases the earlier you take it. So you can see the difference here between age 62 and age 67. You go from $2,000 if you wait until age 67, down to $1,400 for age 62. So there is a decrease the earlier you take it. And on the flip side of things, there's actually an increase by 8% each year you wait after full retirement age. So you can see if you go from age 67 to age 70, you would receive an extra $480 per month. So that's kind of a starting point, and you can see these base numbers on a Social Security statement. And so that's a good starting place to look at, okay, if I took my benefits at 62, what it would look like. If I took my benefits at full retirement age and also at age 70. But a lot of different factors go into when you actually should claim Social Security. So are you still working? What kind of income sources do you have? Do you have pensions? What's your portfolio assets look like? And very individualized, what is your longevity? Do you have parents and grandparents who live to be 100? It may make sense to put off receiving Social Security at that point. And we might talk about it a little bit later, but there is a COLA also associated with Social Security. So that helps it keep up with inflation over time. So that's something also to take into effect. And I just want to mention briefly here these two bullet points. So you can see the big difference here from age 70 down to age 62 you actually get a 77% increase over that time, and that doesn't include those COLAs. But during that time, you also give up 134,000 in benefits. So really, if on an individualized basis, weighing whether you should wait to take Social Security or you should take it early and use the government's dollars, or actually your dollars you put into it, to make your retirement income plan work.
Yeah, and I think that it's you kind of touched on just even the first layer of complexity. So it feels really straightforward of like, okay, would I rather have 134,000 in cash plus 1,400 a month, or would I rather have 2,480 a month for the rest of my life? But then you've already kind of mentioned the COLA, which it stands for cost of living adjustment. Would you rather have a 3% increase on 2,480, or do you rather have a 3% increase on 1,400? Right, and you start compounding that right over your working career. You have compounding interest working for you. So you kind of have probably had a taste of that. Now you start factoring that in of your compounding on a larger number or a smaller number, just starts getting more and more complex, makes things extra fun or extra infuriating depending on where you sit.
Absolutely.
Do you mind talking a little bit about you mentioned like earning in retirement? So if I'm collecting, doesn't matter if I'm working part-time or full-time, can I be double dipping? How does that work?
Sounds good. I will touch on that. When we talk about working while you're receiving Social Security benefits, you kind of look at 3 different stages: before full retirement age, during the year you reach full retirement age, and at or after your full retirement age. And I'll take a step back here and just briefly for what kind of earnings or what kind of income is associated with the earnings limit. And that's really your wages or net self-employment income. So really, if you go to a job day after day, it's kind of that top line number on your pay statement that you earn. So before full retirement age, there is a limit on how much you can earn before Social Security kind of holds back some of the benefits, and that's 18,960 in 2021. So for every $2 you earn over that amount, $1 is withheld. So how does that work? When you receive your Social Security benefits, if you do make over that amount, the Social Security Administration will withhold from a monthly paycheck how much you went over. And so there's kind of a misconception there that you lose that money forever, and that's not really the case. When you get to full retirement age, your benefits are actually recalculated. So a quick example of how this would work is that if you collected benefits, say 10 months early, and you worked while you received benefits, and the Social Security Administration withheld, say, 2 months worth of benefits, when you get to full retirement age, those benefits are actually recalculated. So it looks like you turned on your benefits only 8 months early. So you would get a bump in the benefit over time. So moving on to the year you reach full retirement age, you could actually make substantially more in that year where your Social Security benefits wouldn't be reduced at all. And then for our retirees or non-retirees who love what they do and they keep working, they can actually make $1 million when they're 68 years old and receive their full Social Security benefits. So certainly something to keep in mind when we look at the strategies is, are you working, and how would that affect your current benefits in these different situations?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. So I've run across clients that they retired when they were 62, right? And had no plans on going back. And then somebody reached out and said, hey, I really need you to work on this project, or I have this one, this just work opportunity and I have to turn it away, or I'm telling the boss there, like, don't pay me so much because I don't want to lose my Social Security income. I think it's important to recognize, like, it's going to recalculate and you'll make those dollars back up, right? It kind of rebalances. So you don't need to turn away. If you have an opportunity to make $1 million next year, don't turn it away just because you're on Social Security. You'll be okay.
Very good point. Absolutely.
One thing that you didn't touch on, could you talk about like the first year that you're drawing, how those limits are applied? Is it 50,000 for the year, or is it monthly, or how does all of that work?
Yeah, absolutely. In the first year that you retire, there's actually a monthly test that makes it a little bit more generous in the year you retire, so that you can break down these numbers depending on what age you retire at. You can actually break them down on a monthly basis. So if you retire in, August or something like that, and you make less than the monthly amount for that year, then you're golden. So if you become fully retired after your retirement date, then you're good to go. You won't have any Social Security benefits withheld in that post-retirement timeframe.
Perfect. All right, the next fun topic, or kind of two topics built into one. If you're married, right? So if you have a spouse and you're kind of looking at two separate benefits, and then they start layering in some strategies that go along with that. Do you want to take a deeper dive into that side of things?
Sure, and that is really one of the most complicated, or certainly one of the top factors we look at when we're looking at benefits, is the spousal benefits, and then also survivor benefits. I'll touch base on in just a moment. So we know that full retirement age, you can receive your full benefit amount. For example, when we looked at the 2000, but there was also spousal benefits available as well. So the non-earning spouse can receive as much as 50% of the earning spouse's retirement benefit. So say that Sue was making or had a full retirement benefit of 2,000 at age 67, and Joe's benefit was only $600 at his full retirement age. Joe could actually get $1,000 at his full retirement age. So we see this a lot with income disparities when one spouse makes significantly more than another. The spousal benefit is really a huge part of the planning process. And then we also see this come into play with age differences as well, where it could make sense to take a spousal benefit. Something interesting that not everyone knows is that in order to take those spousal benefits, the spouse who has the higher benefit actually has to claim Social Security benefits first. So I know Craig has dealt with situations where, waiting to turn on the benefit sounds great, but then that also limits the spouse taking the benefit as well.
Yeah, and in those spots, it's because the spousal benefit stops at 50% of the full retirement age amount, right? So so my wife and I are the same age. If I'm trying to wait till 70 and she's going to draw off mine, hers stops growing at age 67, right? So if I can keep delaying, but I'm losing that, not both of our benefits is growing off of that, and she's still sitting there waiting until I turn mine on before she can access hers. Um,
Right.
uh, there's one other thing that I was going to ask on that. Um, oh, I just always like to point out that it's because it's easy to kind of skip over. It's that the spouse gets to replace their full retirement amount with an amount equal to half of the larger earning spouse's one. So you can still draw early, right? So if my full retirement age is 67 and I'm drawing off of a spouse's record, I can draw at 62, but it's a reduction off of that 50%. I don't just automatically get 50%. It ends up being even less than that. Maybe I end up with 40% of what my wife's benefit was because I'm taking it a couple years early. It's just basically swapping out your kind of focal amount. What's the name for that? Your primary insurance amount, is that what it is?
Yep, the old PIA.
Yeah, swapping out your primary insurance amount for half of your spouse's. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack us there. This piece, the survivor piece, I think is really interesting and where things get even more complex.
Yeah, and when we do these analysis, it's important to know, like, when we look at this over the long term, you can really see the variations in the amount you'll receive over time, and that helps us make the decision that might be right for you. One of the big decisions is looking at what the survivor benefits will be, because we can look at, what the benefits will be while you're alive, but the survivor benefit, it can become really important. So when someone passes away, the surviving spouse basically gets the higher benefit. So if you were receiving an amount and your spouse passes away and they were receiving a higher amount, you basically can switch over to that higher amount, which is a really, really great for the survivor. You aren't lucky enough to keep both benefits. Wouldn't that be nice? But you get to keep the higher amount. And so this really comes into play often when we're looking at large age variations and also income gaps. And we can take a look at, okay, if the higher earning spouse collects at full retirement age, this might be the survivor benefit for the younger spouse in 20 years. But if he or she waits until age 70, this is what the survivor benefit could be at that time. And we can really take a look and see the variation there and see if it fits into the overall plan, or which timing makes the most sense for the clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes, extremely important on the larger of the two benefits, right? So you're looking, not to put my actuary hat on, right? So we're looking at the longer of two lifetimes with the larger benefit and the shorter of two lifetimes with the smaller benefit. And that kind of factors into some of the probability that you're dealing with. Yeah, it gets a little complicated pretty quickly on that. As Aaron was talking about, so, building it into your larger plan. I love the phrase. I like to run what I call lifeboat drills. So it's okay if the worst case scenario happens, what happens to your plan? So it's okay in year one, or the second year that both of you have drawn Social Security, that one person passes away, what income disappears, and kind of taking a look and saying, okay, well, the smaller of the Social Securities disappears, and maybe a pension disappears, or what things vanish, and then is the remaining income large enough for the spouse to live off of? Because it's not always the case, and especially if you have two spouses that are both drawing Social Security early, that makes a really big difference than one at 62 and one at 70. Preserving the 70, the age 70 benefit might mean an extra $15,000 a year of income, right? That's a very meaningful difference. So it really depends on your plan. If you both have pensions with spousal benefits attached to them, well, then maybe it's not so consequential, but it's so dependent on your situation. So I think we're right at the 15-minute mark, so we're just going to cross over into our bonus time here. We have to start charging extra, or maybe Aaron's going to start charging me extra for making them, for volunteering them for more than 15 minutes. But we'll dive into some of these bonus questions if you're still good for it.
Sounds great. We'll do some freebie time here.
All right, I'll start you with a softball here. Can you talk through like filing, the actual, like, what do I need to know if I'm ready to turn on Social Security?
Yeah, this one's pretty simple compared to what we've talked about so far with the actuary tables and everything else. But so if you're planning to file just for regular retirement benefits through Social Security, you can just do that online, which is great. And you want to take a look at that 3 or 4 months before you're ready to file. One thing the representatives won't do is give you advice on which option to choose. They can show you, the values of each different strategy you choose. So whether it's a spousal benefit or your own benefit, but they're not going to advise you on specific benefits to choose. So just keep that in mind when you go to file, that you'll need to have a good sense of what you're planning to do when you go or when you call them.
Yeah, that's something that that you and the rest of the planning department do that I think is beautiful, is that when we do Social Security analysis for people, or as part of a larger plan, when you call in or when you go to file, you have the exact wording of, this is exactly what I would like to do. There's no doubt about it. You're using their language. You're not having to kind of stumble into things, because can be a little intimidating, and the people in the Social Security office do not get paid nearly enough, and they're going through enough that it can be tricky sometimes.
Perfect.
Um, all right, for all the pessimists or maybe the realists of the world, you want to could you share your thoughts on solvency? Will Social Security be around when you and I want to collect? Will be around in 5 years, in 10 years? What does that look like? And maybe your favorite solution or two of what you would see they could do to try and improve things.
All right, that's a tricky one, and I don't want to get too political here because certainly a hot topic out there. What's going to happen to Social Security? Will it be around for millennials? Will it be around for those who are already collecting? So the trust fund or the Social Security savings account is in trouble. There's no doubt about that. The recent estimates are that fund will be completely dry in 2035. With the whole COVID situation over the last year, that actually might make things worse. And there's been talks about, how worse will that make that? And if it really does create more of a near-term issue, that maybe that will spur some action from those politicians. But really, it's important to note that the revenues that come from Social Security can pay out a substantial amount of the current benefits. And I think it's common sense to know that politicians aren't generally running on, taking away dollars from senior citizens, and decreasing Social Security. So probably some different things, different strategies might come together. Craig and I were talking just the other day. There's literally lists of hundreds of different solutions that could help increase the level of solvency for the trust fund. So they range from, decreasing the COLA over time, increasing the retirement age. So, full retirement age might be 67 now, and when Craig and I get to retirement age, it might be 85. So I think that for those collecting Social Security currently or in the near term, I don't think there's too much of an issue to worry about, but we'll certainly keep an eye out. I think that the politicians will come up with some sort of solutions for that. In the longer term, for some of our younger clients, we are being cautious and running our financial plans with Social Security and without Social Security, just to be on the conservative side of things. But I think there will be some Social Security, and especially those for those who are currently collecting. I wouldn't count on having a reduction, and that's a good thing. But we'll certainly keep our ears open to listen to what's going on in Washington.
Yeah, we saved these hot takes for the bonus time, Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, couple things I want to add on top of that. I think that some of the major proposals we've seen getting some traction recently have been kind of tax centered. So we could see that Social Security tax starts layering in, right? So you're only paying Social Security tax on the first 130,000 that you're earning right now, and then you don't pay above that. There's talks of like a donut hole of not paying between 130 and 400, and then it's kicking back in after that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Something I take an awkward amount of comfort in that we've come within 4 years of running out of money before, and then Congress said, hey, maybe we should fix this. So we still got, what does that leave us, 10 years until 2031 before Congress will really see like, oh gosh, I guess we need to make a change. So well, we'll see. I'm hoping that we get an answer before then, but I'm not holding my breath. All right, last question, and then I'll let you get back to running these Social Security analyses and financial plans. What situations, I always think it's helpful to know, like, what are things that should raise a red flag of, oh gosh, I need to do a deeper dive on this. I know our recommendation is like everyone should have a good strategy approaching Social Security, but what are things that you think, oh gosh, your strategy might be a little more complicated and you should take a much deeper dive?
Right. Yeah. So on the simple side of things, we always want to take a look at this, but if a spouse and his or her spouse are basically the same age and have the same income, same earnings, that's not very complicated of a situation. They worked until full retirement age, and then we can kind of go from there. But some of the more complicated situations that we might want to look at is when your ages are quite different. There's a big gap in ages that brings in some different strategies. And then when incomes are really different, we'll want to take a look at those as well to see what the best options are. And that's where we really, really start to think about the survivor benefits and also the spousal benefits.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think longevity plays a pretty big role. If you know that your family history is outside the norm in one direction or the other, that I think plays into things pretty significantly. And then one thing that we haven't really talked about is um, the credits that you've earned in towards Social Security. So if you go to like page 3 of your 4-page report, you can see that earnings that have paid Social Security tax every year. Social Security is based off of your 35 highest earning years, indexed for inflation. If you see that there's some major gaps in there, if you're saying, oh, it's going to take my 35 highest earning years and I only have 28, well, maybe you need to take a much deeper dive on this and kind of talk through a strategy of, even if it means part-time work until you draw Social Security, that might have a more substantial impact than somebody that, like you said, has had consistent earning with a cost of living adjustment, both spouses at the same age, earned about the same amount. That becomes a little more straightforward than a 10-year age gap, a $70,000 income gap, and missing years of earnings. That sort of stuff all kind of triggers like, maybe we should talk this through a little deeper.
Great point.
So along those same lines, so one thing that our planning department, that Aaron and the rest of our planning department have as a tool within their tool belt is a Social Security software to run analysis to give you the exact numbers of, it makes sense for, I think you said John and Sue, right? If maybe Sue should be drawing at 68 and John should be drawing at 64 in 7 months, right? That they'll give you a very exact breakdown. We always kind of operate in a much larger financial planning strategy, but certainly have that resource to give you a pretty exact just in Social Security analysis. So if that's something you're interested in, please reach out. If you're watching this, you obviously have access to my contact information on screen. So reach out to me at cgingerich@sagerutty.com or at 585-512-2385 or just sagerutty.com. I'm sure you can find Aaron or I. I'll wrap up with a big thank you to Aaron. Thank you for being on the Tele today and for sharing just a tiny sliver of your vast knowledge on Social Security. So I really appreciate you sharing that with all of our listeners.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have further questions, as always, please don't hesitate to reach out. Always happy to help. Thanks everyone.